Hello, everyone out there. What up, what up, what up? It is your boy Lupe from the film Exiles coming at you with ENN number 29. 29 is kind of an odd number. I can't wait for us to get to number 30.
True.
I can't, I
True.
can't, I can't, I can't front. It really sounds weird saying 29, but I am happy to be here and I am excited to be joined on your favorite entertainment news podcast with two of our usual hosts. Hey, Christian, how are you doing?
What up, man? Hope you're surviving quarantine okay. I hope everybody out there, your families, and everyone's doing well. Hey, that's what's most important, right?
That is what's most important, and I'm doing the best I can. Paul, what about you?
Same, doing well. No complaints. Still enjoying the slower pace of life, and can't complain. So looking forward to talking some movies with you guys tonight.
All right. So we have some really juicy topics today, guy. I really think that the passion is going to be like overflowing. It's going to get heated. I think we're going to fight. And as a matter of fact, I got to say we're lucky that we're doing this over the internets, over the webs. Because if we're in the same room, I think we might just tear each other apart. It's going to be that crazy. All right. So this is our rundown of topics for the week. We're going to start with comments from Matt Reeves' Batman movie, comments made by Robert Pattinson. He did a little GQ interview, and he had some things to say, and so are we. Then Josh Trank, he's making a comeback. Josh Trank, he directed the Fantastic Four movie. That's one of the most storied blockbuster fails in recent history. He's making a comeback, so he had a really interesting expose in Polygon magazine, and we're going to talk about what we learned about his journey in that. Also, we're going to talk about the David Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. This has began to, get some steam, and people are talking about it. As a matter of fact, the hashtag is saved on Twitter. So we're going to talk about what it is, what it could be, its merits, its demerits. We're going to do a little bit of a dive in. Then we got some news that Hamilton is going straight to VOD on Disney Plus, I think. We'll get into the details of that, but it was supposed to come out next year, but it's going to be released soon. Then we're going to bring back our coming soon section, guys, because there have been no trailers recently because of the pandemic we've been dealing with. We haven't had a coming soon section to talk about, but we're going to talk about the new Unreal Engine 5 trailer that dropped today. We're going to react to that. So that was our rundown, and this is the real deal. So guys, let's start with Robert Pattinson's Batman comments. So today, GQ released an interview that they did about Robert Pattinson, where he talks about where he's at mentally in his life right now. He talks a little bit about his journey in acting, talks about what quarantine has been like for him. It's a little bit of an insight into a normal day in the life of a super normal person in terms of him being a celebrity and a public figure. And he made some very interesting comments. So let's start with Paul. Paul, why don't you talk us through some of the things that caught your eye and your response?
Well, I mean, I think the major thing that that catches your attention is the comment he made about not training, right? And when you're already an undersized guy, training for a Batman role where you've just had Affleck, at 6'4", who'd obviously put on a lot of muscle mass for the role, and you had a very physical Batman in Batman vs Superman. This seems like a big departure. That being said, I mean, I think there's a little bit of maybe trying to get a reaction with this comment, maybe a little bit of dry sense of humor. I have a hard time believing that he's truly not working out. I mean, he does talk about still eating the diet, eating tuna with hot sauce out of the can, that kind of stuff, eating his oatmeal with protein powder in the morning. So he's still doing something, but you look at the pictures, and I think the it's a look he's going for. Obviously, he's going for the disheveled heroin addict kind of look with the $7,000 snakeskin jacket on, and he's taking these pictures himself, right? So, I mean, I'm sure there's a little bit of that male model style he's going for here, which doesn't necessarily showcase any work he might have done, but he still looks very skinny, right? So I think, I'm not as concerned as some are. Let me say that. I never thought we were going to get a physical Batman from him, and I've never got the sense that that's what they're going for with this film. I don't think it's going to be especially action heavy. I mean, we've heard the term noir detective thrown around a lot for this film, and I think this just further confirms it. So I'm not as riled up as many are about this, but I mean, he does still have to sell the character, right? He's still got to put on enough muscle mass to to make it believable, allow you to suspend disbelief. And I know they can do some things with costumes, but after some of the, after having Affleck and Christian Bale previously, even if he's not going to be as physical, you still need some physicality. And I think the comments he made about, not wanting to set a precedent by not wanting to be part of the problem by setting a precedent that you have to work out for these roles are a little ridiculous. But again, I think that was him trying to be a little edgy and trying to say something that's going to get a reaction. I think you guys might be maybe a little more impassioned about it than I am. You certainly, Lupe, but that's my takeaway from it. I think it just cements the kind of movie we're going to get. We're probably not going to get an especially physical Batman. We're probably going to get more of the detective, maybe the emotionally damaged psychopath lurking in the shadows, but we're not going to get a warehouse fight scene with Robert Pattinson. I think that's my takeaway from it, and to be honest, it's not really a surprise. It is a little bit of a surprise that he's not further ahead in his training, especially since they were already filming, but even if it was only 25% of the way through filming, but who knows? Time will tell. This doesn't really impact my feelings about the film, and I'll wait and see. Try and keep an open mind. I'm not as jaded about this film as some are, so I'm still holding out some optimism for this one. What are your thoughts on it?
Let's first hear from Christian.
Yeah, I want to be clear. Paul did a good job there, and I don't have a ton to add. So just because you make a ton of money, that doesn't mean you can't be suffering, and it doesn't mean that you can't be affected by the quarantine and the pandemic. But we've seen some of this from, I think, other celebrities too, making the rounds on social media, trying to remind us how quote unquote normal they are, that this is affecting them. And I'm sure it is. So, but I do want to be very clear that just because you make a ton of money or you're a celebrity or whatever, doesn't mean that you can't have depression. And it doesn't mean that this really can't be fucking you up, being stuck inside and everything. So I really hate saying this. I really do. He just comes across as entitled in the article. Yep. And I think that's what bothered me the most. Now, like Paul, I'm waiting to pass judgment on this Batman movie. And Batman is one of my favorite comic characters, so I'll wait. And one of the big reasons is because I was totally wrong about Ben Affleck, and I called it wrong. And when I got out of BVS, I told people I called it wrong because I really loved his portrayal. And I think Paul mentioned film noir, and I think he's right there, that this is probably not going to be Batman Begins, and this is not going to be the brutal Panther-like Batman that we got in that warehouse scene in BVS. It's just not, and the guy that really bulked up and wore armor for his fight against Kal-El. But this is something that I think Lupe is going to go into, so I will not steal a lot of his thunder here. Previous Batman actors like Ben and like Christian Bale have poured themselves into this role, and even guys like Chris Pratt have been extremely dedicated to Star-Lord. So this just comes across as a guy who's trying to be a tryhard, really. And it's just, look at me. And entitlement is still where this hits me. So reserving judgment. But I mean, look, I'll just give it to you this way. This article did not ingratiate Robert Pattinson to me as a fan. So I'll wait it out. I have faith in Reeves, but man, entitlement is just the word that I would use before I throw it back to Lupe there. So there you go.
Okay. Well, guys, let me preface this with a little bit of preamble. So coming into any movie, I always strive to give everything a chance. You have to meet things on their own terms. You should move through life in a faithful manner and an optimistic manner and looking for the best in people until they prove you wrong. And that's what Robert Pattinson has done with this statement. He is coming on the heels of one of the best Batmans we have ever seen. When you talk about a Batman that comes right out of the comics, a superhuman, a human being in peak physical condition, Ben Affleck was able to capture that. Not just by his chiseled jaw, his dark brunette hair, his, 007, good looks, or not even by the weight he lifted, because Christian Bale also did, a good job with his physique. But Ben Affleck was like 6'4". You're born with height or you're not. So the casting of Batfleck it's just ridiculously good. So he's already up against it, and a lot of fans and a lot of people said, "Oh, give him a chance. It's not fair. You can't compare, blah blah blah." And that was a rallying cry from a lot of people who wanted people to give it, a fair chance. And I completely agreed with that. But what Pattinson has done is that he's taken all that goodwill and just pissed all over it. He has just rubbed it in the dirt. He's shit on it. It's his comments are some of the most disrespectful thing I have heard coming from someone who's gotten this incredible opportunity. So let me read verbatim what the excerpt from the article is, so that you guys can understand what we're saying. So it says, the film studio hired a trainer who left Pattinson with a Bosu ball, a single weight, and a sincere plea to use both. But right now, he says he's ignoring her. That is unprofessional. Forget what you think the movie's going to be like, what type of story they're trying to tell, blase blah, whoopty whoop. That is unprofessional. This is like anyone in any job telling you that they're just not going to do their job, that they're not going to, fulfill the requirements of their job. People would die to have a trainer hired for them, and a trainer pushing them and giving them advice and meal plans, and people pay extra money to get these kind of luxuries. Even people who are like athletes coming up, like when we're in high school, like we were hiring trainers to train us in the summer. Like your parents will have to do that, or you train on your own. So for him to be saying he's ignoring her, that is mind-blowing to me. First, on just a professional level, it's disgusting. Okay? Now, he goes on to say, I think if you're working out all the time, you're part of the problem. He says, sign. By you, he means other actors. You set a precedent. No one was doing this in the 70s. Even James Dean, he wasn't exactly ripped. The other thing he's now doing is he is shitting on the legacy of actors that have done it before. He's shitting on the progress that has been made. As I've said in talking about this movie and movies like this, is that we are learning from things that worked in the past, and we're getting better and better. If you look at all the Batman movies, Superman movies, whatever it is, the technology, the portrayal of these, heroes, it's been getting better and better. And they may not be perfect, you may not like them, but we can see that things are advancing. And here he is saying that calling the high standard that has been set, calling it a quote unquote precedent. It reeks of laziness. It reeks of a lack of ambition. It reeks of not taking pride in your craft and your job. And then he goes on to say that the article says, he says that back when he was a star of the Twilight franchise, the one time they told me to take off my shirt, I think they told him to put it back on again. But Batman is Batman. Pattinson called another actor on the film, Zoe Kravitz, the other day, and she said she was exercising 5 days a week during their exile from set. Pattinson, well, literally, I'm just barely doing anything, he says again, sighing. So we're seeing that another of his cast members is being professional, is doing what she needs to do. She's playing Catwoman after two beloved Catwomans have come before her, and she's throwing herself into the role and doing what needs to be done. She's being professional. She's taking advantage of and appreciating the honor that has been bestowed upon her. Like, I'm just completely flabbergasted by this on so many levels, and I've not even gotten into what the movie is supposed to be or what type of Batman they're supposed to be. That has nothing to do with this. This just has to do with even like doing the minimum, not even going above and beyond. Now, to be sincere, if you look at if you look further into this excerpt, the trainer left him with a Bosu ball and a single weight. If you're left with a Bosu ball and a single weight, I don't think that they're looking for a massive Batman, because that's not like mass building sort of equipment. It just is. But also,
that's like maintaining your tone, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also, let's not forget that before this movie started, there were reports that it was delayed about 6 weeks because Robert Pattinson was not putting on weights. Putting it on, they were saying fast enough or something like that. So this has been a trend. And in life, failure or coming up short, it happens to everybody. Professional athletes lose games. People, great actors sometimes turn in performances that they're not so proud of. All of us, we've come short of our most glorious selves at points in our lives. It's the human experience. But what, people sort of latch on to is that you tried.
Yeah.
Did you try? If you tried, people will root for you. People will be like, you know what? If he said something to the effect of, I'm really trying, I'm doing my best, but I've never ever lifted weights before. I'm an ectomorph, so it's very hard for me to put on weight. If you see how much I eat, it's this, blah, 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 blah. I'm going through this, like, that'd be different. But what he's saying is that he's ignoring the training. It's to me, it's completely unacceptable. And I know we can have the excuse of maybe this is a sign of someone going through some mental issue.
I was thinking about that.
Stress.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
But that's not an excuse. That's not an excuse. Like, when you're in an elevated position, you need to perform, or else you're going to get criticism. I've also dealt with depression. There are things that, due to being in depressive states, I have not done well in. But you're not going to go to people at a job or whatever it is and say, oh, I was depressed, or relationships that get damaged because of that, and say, I was depressed. Nobody's going to listen to that. It's like, this is life. Like, if you're going to go through this, then don't take the job. Like, you just have to persevere, and you have to work through, or get a good sort of help system, and put things in place. But at the end of the day, you have to perform. Like, he's in an elevated position. These are some of the positions in our world: celebrity, fame, fortune, that not everybody gets. And the harsh truth of it is that no matter what you're going through, you either perform or you have to move aside and let others who will do it. To me, it's completely mind blowing. And at this point, I'm completely done giving him a chance. I'll still give the movie a chance at the end of the day, but I'm done giving him a chance, giving him the benefit of the doubt as an actor, as a performer, because I know that he didn't give it his all. And I'll leave it there.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, there's a lot there that the three of us said, and I know there's really not a ton for me to add. But if he is going through something, let's say he does have a mental issue like I do, it's hard. You got to take care of it. You got to take care of it. That's he made a commitment. You got to take care of it. I've had difficulties taking care of things myself, but
So have
yeah,
I. So have I.
it's
It's very sad. It's very unfortunate, but
yeah, I hear you. It's
but life
just
doesn't stop like that, and that's one thing that's very hard that we learn, and we learn the hard way. Life doesn't stop. There are
yeah,
other
you learn
people
it
that
hard. You're right.
rely on you.
You're right.
Yeah, like there are other people that are relying on you. Like if this movie bombs because he wasn't like a good Batman, or like there are people's careers that are depending on that.
Right.
People are putting food on their tables. Like this is not like a joke to people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like if he really worked hard and did the best that he could. And I'm not saying it's exactly this, but I'm saying these are the sort of these little things are sort of things that make a movie legendary and a movie mediocre.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And if a movie's legendary, that can put food on the table for generations of a family. If a movie's mediocre, it could be forgotten and people could struggle to find their next gig. So
And movies are more than just a movie. It's also the narrative that goes around the movie. And
exactly.
this is just, negative press can crush it. And
exactly.
this was just a bad look. This article was just a bad look, I think.
Yeah, but to be honest, I'm thankful for the illumination of the article. Mm-hmm. Because if at the end of the day we saw him and we're like, oh, his physique is terrible, some of us, I included, would have been very critical about that. And there would have been people who would hide behind so many excuses, because that's what stands and fans do. Yeah. They forget all evidence that's right in front of them, and they lean on sort of on excuses to try to paint everything with rainbow colored paint, and don't look at the reality. And the reality is right there. Like, this guy is unprofessional.
Yeah.
Like you can't paint it any other way. He's unprofessional, and he's not committed to the role. He's not giving it his all. That's just what it is. It's really sad. And I'm thinking of this. Forget Batman and the whole thing. Regardless of the movie, any movie that I see this sort of story on, to me, it's annoying.
Yeah.
It grates on my nerves.
Yeah.
Absolutely grates on my nerves. He's ignoring her.
Ugh.
Jesus Christ.
It's terrible. Horrible. Don't hold back. Tell us how you really feel. Sorry.
Hey.
I just feel good for you that you got to get that off your chest.
yeah, dude. Like, let's move on to our next topic. And this one is not any more pleasant, but you know what? I like this one because it's a redemption story. So it's about Josh Trank. And if you don't know who Josh Trank is, he was this Hollywood wonder kid. He was like the youngest guy in Hollywood to direct like a massive, sort of like blockbuster, younger than Steven Spielberg, broke his record, beat him to the finish line. He started out with his Hollywood debut was Chronicle. It's a found footage movie in the superhero subgenre, but an original property. If you haven't seen that movie, trust me, one of the best superhero movies ever made. It's an original thing and just so well written, directed, crafted. The tone was just masterfully handled. Then he quickly jumped to massive tentpole blockbuster, and he had a Star Wars movie in the bank waiting for him. So this guy was, forget Cloud 9. This guy was on Cloud 999. Like, he was doing things no one had ever done on the planet, period. And it all came crashing down with Fantastic Four. It's a movie that went through incredible production hurdles, and his vision was ripped from him, was essentially fired and neutered on the set. His name was slandered. He was painted as a villain, hard to work with. And he lost his Star Wars gig because they were going to fire him. So he gracefully bowed out before they had the chance to do that. And he went into a lot of dark places, suffering depression, trying to crawl out of the darkness. And He has found himself again. He has matured a lot. He has healed internally, and he's coming out with a movie called Capone. So he has this expose in the Polygon magazine where he's able to tell his own side of the story. It's no longer bloggers and reporters and journalists and sources talking about who he was and how he messed up and how terrible of a person he was. He's telling his own story. So it's a very compelling story which tells you a lot about how Hollywood works, about the balancing act of making a blockbuster and these paradoxical competing ends of creating art and creating commerce, and how unique that can be, and how it's a magic trick to make a movie out of those competing um, ends. And some interesting things stuck out to each one of us from this article, and we're going to go over those. So let's start with Paul.
Yeah. So, okay, I wasn't really paying a whole lot of attention back when Fantastic Four came out. I mean, I was somewhat checked out of the out of comic book movies back then. I wasn't as aware of some of the narratives that were going on online. I was generally aware that this one wasn't well received, but when I watched it, it was fine. I mean, it felt to me like there was elements actually I really enjoyed. I thought visually, I liked the style of it. The first half or so of the movie I thought was really good. The second half isn't as memorable for me, and I don't have a clear vision in my head of the film, but I didn't hate it. And in fact, I liked it better than some comic book movies. Certainly liked it better than a lot of the jokier stuff. But this is illuminating, right? Like, over the past few years, obviously, I've become more aware of more generally aware, I guess, of what happened. That there was some, obvious studio interference, some of the most egregious, clashes between studio and director that we've heard of, and obviously the damage that it did to his reputation. But the until this article, you don't really know the details, and it's not entirely shocking, but it is somewhat shocking, right? And I guess what jumps out to me, is that there's a few quotes in this article that it just kind of backs up your worst fears about what goes on in these studios, right? So the first one, they're talking about the first cut of Fantastic Four catching studio executives off guard. It says they told the director the movie wasn't the marketable romp anyone had hoped for, that it wasn't, quote, for the fans, that the morose tone would make people uncomfortable, that it did make them uncomfortable. And Trank said, well, that was the goal. At least for him, that was the goal, right? And that kind of speaks to, I guess, the kind of filmmaking I enjoy, like a movie that makes you feel something. I think after a while you get tired of these formulaic romps, right? These blockbuster formulaic romps that seem to be safe and make decent money.
Couldn't agree
And
more.
pardon me?
I say couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
agree more. Get numb to it.
You get numb to it, and you want
Yeah.
something that makes you feel something, and it seems like that's where Trank was coming from. But even when you look at, he's talking about bringing in his choice of writer. He just told the studio, "This is my guy," and his last name was Slater. I can't remember his first name at the moment. Christian, do you remember his first name? I know you might have a better memory on that. No.
I'm sorry. I thought it was. Is it Jeff Slater? No, it's Jeremy. I'm sorry. It's Jeremy Slater. I apologize.
Yeah,
Jeremy
and apparently
Slater.
this was Trank's choice, but then they immediately clashed and had very different versions. And what comes out is that Trank was far more interested in the emotion, the emotional impact this would have on the characters, and the other guy was more of a traditional comic book fan and wanted to to give it the more classic comic booky feel, and which Trank. As you go more through that article, you realize that wasn't his interest at all. Like, he didn't give a shit about the Avengers style movie that Slater was trying to push, and they specifically referenced that Slater was saying, look at the Avengers. This is what people like. This is what we should be trying to do. And Trank hated every second of it, basically. So right off the bat, you've got a complete disconnect, and it makes you wonder, how did he get chosen by the studio to do this film? If the studio wanted a romp, the writer he chose wanted something like the Avengers, and he had a totally different vision. Like, how did the studio not check into this? How did he not talk to the person he chose to write with about what kind of movie they wanted to make? So you can see how it went down the wrong path, right? And then you get later on in this article, and it talks about reshoots and pickups, being standard. But if, in this case, the movie didn't even have an ending. Trank claims that before the production took place, they slashed his budget by $30 million and cut a majority of the spectacle-filled finale, with the idea that they could film a finale in the second round of shooting. So that was apparently their plan right from the onset, was to figure out how to end it later, after basically last-minute chop to the budget. And things got so bad that he eventually confronted the producers over Directors Guild union rights that he felt were not being recognized. The studio complied, in the sense that he negotiated a new deal in which he could re-edit the movie while they worked out their own cut. Fox worked out their own cut, and that both versions would screen for test audiences. And then it goes on to say that unfortunately there was never really like a good faith face-off intended. He found out that there was no way that his version was going to get chosen. The studio had already spent 3 months plus millions of dollars for rewrites and reshoots that would fit in the new guy's cut. Rivkin was his name. And that a teaser trailer had inspired new directions for the film outside of Trank's hands. And this was the quote that really I think grabbed a lot of us, especially in how it relates to Justice League and how Warner Brothers panicked and reacted to the online narratives. So this is what he's quoted saying. He says, "They really do pay attention to what people are saying on Twitter. They look at that and they say, shit, people are freaked out about how it's not going to be funny. So we need to spend $10 million to do a comedy rewrite." Well, if you look what Trank had started out with, I mean, how do you shoehorn in a comedy rewrite to a movie at that stage? And essentially that's what happened to Justice League 2, right? They took a 3-hour, 34-minute movie and said, you know what, this is going to make people uncomfortable and it's not going to be the fun romp we wanted. Let's bring in Joss Whedon to cut this down to 2 hours and turn it into an action comedy. You just can't do that. You just can't. So, it goes on to say that Trank did his version anyway, hoping that maybe Fox would pick out a few scenes and drop them into the version they went with, and that maybe some people would see those scenes, recognize them as his, and give him the benefit of the doubt. And obviously that didn't happen. So, it just gives you, as I say, it just, for me, it's not entirely shocking. It just confirmed my worst fears about what goes on behind the scenes. And, and there was a lot of actual, there's another article actually by IndieWire, more recent, where he's talking about the reaction to Capone. And I really like a lot of what he's saying. I think I'd like him as a filmmaker. And to be honest, I've never seen Chronicle. I didn't hate Fantastic Four as much as most, but what I'm seeing about Capone and some of the very mixed reaction on it makes it feel like something I might enjoy. So I'm going to give Capone a chance, but there's, and I don't want to take up much more time here before I pass it on to you guys, but they were basically mentioning that that of course it's doing poorly on Rotten Tomatoes, as anything that makes people uncomfortable usually does. And he says, I don't want to say I'm not surprised. It was hard to tell what the reactions were going to be because from where I stand, I love the movie deeply. I love the movie so much. I'm so proud of it. There's nothing anybody could tell me about this movie that would make me feel any less of the amount of love that I have for it. So I think he's become comfortable with the reactions. And I think in this case, he got to make his movie. And so he doesn't really care what the reactions are. He's being judged on his movie. Mm-hmm. And he goes on to say, but with the worst reviews of this movie, they do feel like a mirror, but in a way that doesn't make me feel ashamed. It just makes me feel like I'm on the right track with this. I don't know if that sounds smug or anything, but it is a movie that is everything right there for you to see. He's shitting himself. He's mentally deteriorating. It's not pretty. It's an ugly, uncomfortable movie. If that makes you angry, then I guess it worked. That doesn't bother me. I'm not worried about a Rotten Tomatoes percentage or anything. So that I really liked. I like that.
Yeah, I want to give him a standing ovation for that one.
Yeah, I love that. And there's more. But
I admire that kind of conviction. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no, it's okay, Lupe. I've taken too much time anyway. There's a couple other quotes along those same lines, but I'll just wrap it up by saying he carries on very briefly to say that it's not a wish fulfillment movie. There's no glorification of bootlegging or gangster enterprising. Mm-hmm. It's a film that in a very ugly way is deconstructing an iconic masculinity from the moment the movie starts until it ends. Is it hard to watch? I don't know. It's not hard for me to watch. It's either you get it, and you're in it for the ride, and you're part of it, and you also embrace the fun, crazy schlock factor of it, which is incredibly intentional, or you don't, and it bothers you and annoys you, and I'm fine with that. So, that's a luxury I guess you can have with a lower budget film, but it's nice to see that he got to put his film together, and his comments make me think that this is the kind of film that I'd probably enjoy.
Well, before you make your mind up, I would advise that you watch Chronicle before you watch Capone.
Chronicle's good.
Yeah, because I have the
Chronicle's
feeling that I have the feeling Chronicle will be more up your alley and will open you up to who he is before you take a dive into Capone, which I think will be less of the two, at least less up your alley. So my advice would be watch Chronicle first, then watch Capone.
I'll check it out. I mean, I did hear Chronicle, like when Chronicle first came out, I did give it about 5 minutes, and to be honest, the movie's about teens. I have a hard time with them now. I'm kind of, I'm well past that stage in my life, and it was kind of the reaction I had with New Mutants as well when you see these teenage characters, and I'm just like, this is probably not for me. I've probably outgrown this, but hearing this now and learning more about Trank, I think I might go back and make myself sit down and give that one a chance. But I'm looking forward to seeing. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's more of a mature take. It's not the usual sort of teeny bopper, wish fulfillment. I don't know, glossy, fantastical, nostalgic portrayal that we get in a lot of these teenage movies. It's very angsty, deals with a lot of the dark issues that we deal with when we're teenagers, because I don't know about anyone, but I really did not want to be a teenager. I wanted to get the fuck out of those years.
Yeah, I don't want to go back either. I can tell you that.
And I don't want to go exactly. If I want to go back to any time in my life, maybe my college years. Those are
My
but
20s.
teenage years, I don't know why everyone paints it as this fantastical period. Everybody fucking hates being a teenager.
Ugh.
Your parents hate that you're a fucking teenager. You hate being a teenager. There's nothing nostalgic about it. I don't know what.
No, I'm not really anxious to relive it. Like you say, it starts getting good when you get out, right? That's
exactly. So I do encourage you to watch that one before. And for our listeners, we're gonna have a review on Fonzo. It's on Capone. It's I think Chris is gonna do it, so we'll have it on our channel soon, and we'll have some more concrete thoughts about it. We hope that you guys watch it. Let me go ahead and comment on this article. It's a beautiful article, very well written, poetic. It's cinematic in a way, because I feel like it's a tragedy with a redemption arc. What really struck me from this was I heard about Josh Trank, but I heard about him as some kind of entitled Hollywood wonder kid. And to be sincere, the article does paint him as that. And he himself admits to being that. But no condition is permanent. That's who he was before the tragedy happened. I was led to believe that that's who he's been and that's who he is after, and all that kind of stuff. But it was really illuminating to find out that he was in so much pain, felt humiliated, betrayed, jaded on the set of this movie. Because I was led to believe that he was rebellious and and cocksure of himself and overreaching and right on the set. But when you read it, you actually feel a lot of sympathy for him. It feels like someone who had great expectations, brash naivete, and was cut down to size. His dream turned into a nightmare, and it really humanized him, and I felt for him. Now, it's easy to say that, this is an article that's written to stage a comeback. It's propaganda. You're completely right. It absolutely is. But what I like about it, where I see value in it, is that we've heard the story of Just Trank from third parties. We've heard the third person perspective. We've heard other people paint the narrative. Now we're having the first person autobiographical perspective. And now we have all this information and we can synthesize it together and have a clearer picture of who the man is and what his journey has been. And I encourage anyone to read it because it's just an interesting read. It's an interesting read into the rise and fall of a person and their journey back towards redemption. I think it's quite inspiring. It's reassuring in a way. I mean, we just talked about, everyone, going through trials and tribulations and falling and that sort of thing. And this is, a lot of what, this is about, is that, the best of us can fall, the best of us can fail, the best of us can meet tragedy, and the best of us can, fall to the darkest and deepest of depths, but there is a way out if we can pick up ourselves and reconcile with our spirits and find a way out. So I think it's beautiful, and everyone should give it a read. The other thing that struck me that I really want to comment on is the quote about how executives would listen to the chatter on Twitter and freak out and spend $10 million to do a comedy rewrite. It's not like I don't know this because we've lived it, right? I'm a fan of the DCEU movies, and that's exactly what happened to the DCEU. The entire franchise was destroyed based on Twitter narratives, not on any real concrete evidence of anything. I know exactly what has happened in Zack Snyder's career and how narratives have served as real impediments to progress and things that he's wanted to do. I know this from having some insider knowledge. But whenever you hear it, and you hear it in such vivid terms from someone else, all right, not someone who, can say has a bias towards what you're involved in. This is like an outside person from left field, saying the exact same thing that you've come to believe based on, your perspective of the evidence in front of you. It just jars your soul, and you feel it again. And it's amazing how people who are supposed to be professionals and at the top of their craft can be so can seem to lack that fortitude and expertise in these matters. It never ceases to amaze me. So all of you out there that are listening to this, who are supporters of, like, for example, the Snyder Cut, who want change, especially with the Snyder Cut, since people, are flabbergasted by the fact that we haven't heard anything from the studio. They have heard. They definitely have heard, and they are freaking out about it. It's definitely put them on edge, and I really think that we need to continue making noise and continue pushing the button. If you want the Snyder Cut, it will come through if you keep at it and you're very, very vigilant and very, loud about it. And also for whatever causes and whatever anything you want, if you want an actor to be cast as a fan cast, drum up support for it. They're listening to Twitter. Your voice is being heard. So that was something else that I took from it that I thought was very interesting. So, Christian, what do you think of the article? How did it meet you?
Well, I think you guys both of you brought up really good points, and I agree with you. I think people should read the article. You should read more about Josh himself. Give Chronicle a chance, by the way. It's a good movie. I really enjoyed it. I will watch Capone at some point. I think Fan 4 Stick is a mess, and I'm not a fan of the mishmashed final finished product, but you cannot blame all of that on Trank. You simply can't. This is an interesting subject to me because I followed Josh for a while, and while he's always rubbed me the wrong way, I'll be honest about that. And this article and some of the recent stuff I've read about him hasn't really changed that a ton. I think I also see a little bit of myself in him, to be fair, with my own mental health issues. And hey, there's three sides to every story, right? There's he said, she said, and the truth. And the studio definitely tried to spin their narrative, and we've never really had his side outside of him being a little jerky on social media once in a while. Other than that, have we really heard his side? Not really. Not really. So we can get the he said, she said and figure out the truth. I think the story is split into two parts. It's a business part and a Josh part. The business part, On this podcast, we try not to really give too much of a crap about how much money a movie makes and how much money they throw into it, but they do call it the movie industry for a reason. There's a lot of people who've employed in it. Studios spend a lot of money on these movies and these franchises, and they want to see a return on their investment. Interference, fights between the artists and the suits, I think that's been a real component for a very long time in Hollywood. And rewrites, reshoots, and all these creative decisions that have been happening between the directors and everybody going on for decades, they build this shit into almost every single project. Off the pod, we talked about the insanity surrounding poor David Fincher and what he went through with Alien 3. That was a long time ago. Obviously, we know he wasn't the first, and he's not going to be the last. I think we know that. You and Paul also talked a little bit, too, about how did Trank even get this movie in the first place. I think, maybe I'm wrong, I think there's a lot of parallels between him and Fox and them choosing Bryan Singer for X-Men after he blew it out of the park with Usual Suspects. He was successful, but he could be quote-unquote controlled. And now in this era, we got social media, and it's fantastic, but it's bad. The studios have been able to use social media for their advantage, too. I mean, look, this is good because now, more than ever, I think a director and a creator has the opportunity to find their own voice, potentially see a project come to fruition that maybe would never have happened before. And it exposes some of that nastiness that happens to them behind the scenes and these business decisions that can fuck them, I think. But the negative side is to us fans, too. Like, we can pick up a story and run with it, and we can build up our own narrative around a project, and we can just follow whatever the studio says. And what, you know, so it's bad on both sides. But it does give us the opportunity to see the artist's vision. Sometimes the reshoots and the rewrites actually work, guys. Sometimes it actually makes the movie better. That's strange. That's how it is, though. I think we all hate this business side of it, but I just think we need to recognize that it's there. I hope you both understand I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It's there. I'm not agreeing with it. And you know how I feel about 20th Century Fox, how I feel about WB, some of the shit that they've done. No, I'm not agreeing with this at all. But it's there. And it's been going on for a long time, and it's unfair to the director, but this is a business and people are making money off this. That's how it is. So that's the one side of it. On to Trank, and this is where I'll end it. Read his article, obviously read his interview, and I've been following him for a while. As I said, you guys know how I feel, so some of what I'm saying is going to be a little tainted, but I'm trying to keep an open mind. I suffer from depression too. And the more I've read from him in recent years, and especially this in the last month, I've tried to frame my opinion of him around that. And I think the guy is struggling. And I think it's a struggle that he's going to have with him every single day for the rest of his life. Maybe he's rubbed me the wrong way because he's highly opinionated. He can be condescending. He likes to troll people on social media. He's got the type A personality. He's overbearing. But I think, guys, he probably wouldn't be good at his job if he wasn't some of those things. In the article, I don't like the way he treated Slater. I really don't. He's a compatriot, and no matter whether his version of the story or Josh's is better, it's messed up, man. That's another guy in the industry, and you fucked him. That wasn't good. So Josh has made mistakes, but as a depression sufferer, I can tell you guys, I said this to you off the pod, and I thought it was important to record it. When I'm in my lows, I treat the people in my life sometimes like shit. I treat my lovely wife like shit, my closest friends like shit. It's not fair, but I do it, and I feel like garbage when I do it afterwards. And this guy might have hit some of the lowest of the lows after all this happened to him, and he was treating people like dirt because guess what? He hit a low. And what I saw in this article, too, is number one, as a depression sufferer, I have to acknowledge it. I have to acknowledge where I fucked up and where I have treated people like garbage. I have to own up to that. I have to. Sometimes it's my disease talking, but I got to be like, yo, I can control this. And what I found in the article was that it seemed that there was a maturity there at 30 some odd years old that was not at a 20 some odd year old Josh Trank. That he could turn around now and be like, you know what, guys? I recognize that I made this mistake. Yes, you did not get the product that I wanted to give you, and that is the studio's fault. But how I reacted afterwards is my fault. And now I'm going to pour myself into another project and give it my all. So I respect the guy for doing that. And he was absolutely not prepared for the fame that slapped him in the face after Chronicle. There's no way, you know? So look, I didn't necessarily agree with everything that he did with Fantastic Four. Even before all this, you know, the three of us have talked about how we hoped Warner Brothers would hire people that respect comic books a little bit more. He obviously really didn't give a shit about some of the comic stories of Fantastic Four, so I'm disappointed in that. But he was bringing a fresh take to the material that we never had before, and some of the shit that made it into the final film that was his, like the body horror aspect, was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. So I'll end it on this, and I'll throw it back to you guys. We all love a good comeback story. The man has absolutely matured. He has eaten a lot of shit in his life.
Mhm.
So no matter what, from a personal side, I just want to say I wish him the best. I hope his comeback actually happens. I hope he gets the chance to make the movies he wants to make, and he can stay away from the studio bullshit nonsense. He probably won't be able to, because it seems like every director has to run into it, and it will probably continue to happen in the future. But I'm glad that the man seems to have learned, just from a personal level. I can't do shit like this, so I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to pour myself into my art. And if that's what he does, then hey, guys, God bless him. Seriously.
Amen. So, talking about directors running into issues with studios, the tale is old as time. That segues us
La
perfectly to
la
our
la
next
la.
topic, which, which is the David Ayer cut of Suicide Squad. So, yeah, let's hand it over to Paul. Paul, you've done very good background research on this. Frame the discussion for us.
Yeah, so I think we've all known, since 2016 that the movie was meddled with, and as the release, the Snyder Cut movement, I guess for lack of a better word, has gained traction. There's been more and more interest in the possibility of an Ayer cut, and over the last, I don't know, let's say year or two in particular, David Ayer has started to become a little more open about some of what was going to be in his version of the film. And some of this goes back, as I say, well into 2018, where he started to hint at things like Steppenwolf and the Parademons being involved, as people started to go through the concept art and ask him questions. And then he subsequently, he's always a little, I don't know if evasive is the right word in his answers. It's hard to tell at first, or at least in the beginning, it was hard to tell at first if he was being serious, because he tends to respond to trolls more than he does people asking him legitimate questions. So it's been a weird sort of, almost an attitude that comes in some of his comments. But more recently, he's been almost overly apologetic about some of his choices, and he's also opened up a little bit more. And I think what sparked this discussion this week is that he's finally given some concrete answers on certain things with the state of his cut. So to take a step back, I mean, we always knew right from the beginning that most of Jared Leto's stuff was left on the cutting room floor.
Mm-hmm,
There was
yeah.
talk about a different ending with Joker and the Harley, and Joker making a deal with the Enchantress to become the King of Gotham. And it seemed like as we got on, we were getting more and more confirmation, but we didn't really know what was filmed, particularly when it came to the Steppenwolf and Parademon angle. And so going back to December, David Ayer he sent a tweet out that said, "It was supposed to be a boom tube, as she was under control of a mother box. All the apocalypse elements were stripped out late in the game. The machine concept was an attempt to create a ticking clock and a world threat." So I think that's at a point where, that was sort of a point where, at least for me personally, I started to really wonder, did the Steppenwolf and Parademon piece actually get filmed? Because he says stripped out late in the game, but what does late in the game mean? It's vague, right? And this past week, we finally got confirmation on that. So the tweet he responded to, someone said, "So enough footage for a Joker movie. Steppenwolf was apparently in it, and Enchantress as one of the villains plus her brother. Seems a lot going on for just the third DCEU film." So David Ayer responded and said, "No, not enough for a Joker movie. Yes, Parademons. Yes, a Steppenwolf reveal at the very end. That got changed in script. Early prep never went to camera." So we finally have our confirmation that the Steppenwolf Steppenwolf Parademon piece didn't get filmed. But then same day, he was responding to another tweet that said, "From what I've heard, after Joker's helicopter crashed, he made a deal with Enchantress where he'd take Harley and be the king of Gotham, and was present in the third act. Since Suicide Squad was mainly a Harley and Deadshot film, the temptation would have been greater." Ayer responded simply with, "Exactly this, it was filmed." So we now have a little more clarity on what was filmed. And now the question is, it was filmed. How far did it get along in the post-production process? What was the state of the Ayer cut? I mean, we know it had a different score. We know there were rumors of his version being test screened. So, and this again, going back to 2018, Daniel Rickman, Daniel RPK again, I remember him tweeting that he had seen Ayer's version. And he said, as someone who saw a test screening, I know that for a fact the original version was much better. And then later in November, he tweeted again, I was there, so I know what you're talking about, David, and I really liked your original cut. So, and one of these, David Ayer had actually responded to and thanked him for. So we know that there was two versions. We know that Ayer at least got to screen some version of his cut for test audiences. But we don't exactly know what state it's in, because Ayer's also sent out another tweet saying that it would be incredibly expensive to put it in a releasable state, for whatever that means. So, some of what he puts out seems a little contradictory at times, because if it was far enough along that it was getting test screenings, you'd think, well, how expensive could it be to actually, finish it up? So, I guess the first piece of this conversation is, what do you take away from this as the state of the film? And then secondly, what do you think the merits are of releasing the Ayer cut? How does this compare to the Snyder cut? How is it different? Do you think that there is a valid reason to push for the Ayer cut? And what do you think the possibility of that actually happening are? So, Christian, why don't we start with you, and then you can hand it off to Lupe.
I'll say it one more time. Warner Brothers throwing shit against the wall to see if it sticks. I think I say that every single freaking pod.
Because it's true. Because it's so fucking true.
Every single fucking pod. I say it every time. It's ridiculous. Throwing shit against the wall and see if it sticks. I think all the way back, as far back as 2016, I guess, is when the movie was released, right? I remember seeing Hollywood Reporter articles and a couple of other things basically talking about that there were two tones. Now we can see it. The first trailer had this like somberish kind of tone, and then everything started getting mixed up, and we started getting the music in it, and it was a little lighter, and they were trying to play up like it's bad guys, it's what we do, right? They were trying to play up that whole thing. It's clear that something else happened behind the scenes, and I remember an article back then, and Paul, you actually may have sent it to us recently. So we got a chance to reread it. So maybe this is where this is coming from. Warner, somebody who had inside knowledge with Warner executives, said that they were quote unquote blindsided by the response to BVS. So the plans were in place already then for them to start thinking, I guess we got to start moving away from that. Mm-hmm. So it's clear that this movie was messed with. I don't care. It's just my belief. I think this movie was really messed with. And you could see it too, because the movie itself has, you could see it. Lupe, you've said it. And by the way, I agree with you. I like Suicide Squad. I do. But something's weird in that movie. It doesn't connect. There's pieces of that movie that you could see were going in another direction. And dude, I mean, from the trailers, we had the scene with the Joker where half his face is blown off and he's pulling a grenade stick. That's not there. There's a lot of scenes in those trailers that you could piece together that definitely you could see another movie was in there somewhere. Mm-hmm. Some of the stories about Jared Leto, I'm sure, were a little overblown just to give us marketing for the movie. But still, there was a lot more of him in there than what we got. So there were pieces of a movie that were going in another direction here. So part one, to answer your question, I do believe that's there, Paul. I do think there is an Ayer cut out there somewhere. Now, part two, do we need it? I don't know. I don't know. I'm the kind of guy that usually is, I think that conversation is, do we want to fight for the creative freedom? Do we want to fight for the creative process? If that's what you want to go, do you support David Ayer? Do you want to see that? Does this further support, especially what you guys want to see of the world that the Snyderverse was building? Do you want to see more of that? If that's the case, and a case can be made for that, and maybe we'll get more of that, or maybe Warner Brothers can make money off that, whatever, then absolutely, I think so. I've always kind of leaned towards sometimes, like Justice League was atrocious, but it's like, whatever, it's what we got, I'm done, move on. It's over. So I think that, if you are going to fight for that, and that's what you're looking for, then maybe it makes sense to start a Release the Ayer Cut movement. But I'm not so sure what it would solve at this point. That's what I ask. I don't know where we would go from here. Is the Snyderverse coming back? Probably not. Probably not. So even if he gets a 5-picture deal, is that going to be its own movie universe? The EU is going to go do whatever the fuck it's doing right now because we still have no idea what it's doing. I have no faith that they would suddenly bring him back and have them make 5 movies or
Mhm.
whatever it is and start building another universe again. I have no faith in that. So I don't know what it solves at this point, and except to say more of this is what we could have had and now it's gone. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll listen to what Lupe has to say. I'm just not sure at this point what it means to try to fight to get the Ayer cut, you know?
Well, personally, yeah, go ahead.
Lupe, I just want to ask your opinion on one thing too, as you get into, even before you get into the merits of it, just the state of the cut. The one thing that I didn't address earlier that really I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around is if Steppenwolf and the Parademons were removed. I mean, that was before principal photography. That's before the fallout of BVS. That's back when Snyder was still involved, and and the David Ayer has said in the past that that Steppenwolf and the Parademons were dropped as the Justice League script evolved. So that to me is before the takeover of Jeff Johns. So that seems to me like it, based on the timing, that it must have been a decision made in conjunction with Snyder and his plans for Justice League before they were butchered. So I just want to get your thoughts on that piece in particular, because one of the things when we talk about is this worth fighting for is how different is it going to be? Like, I think the idea that Steppenwolf and the Mother Boxes and the Parademons were going to be introduced in Suicide Squad leading into Justice League makes a ton of sense at a high level.
Yeah, it does at a high level.
And it's a very attractive and intriguing idea. But if it was cut out before the butchery, before the response to BVS, why? And that's what I'm struggling with. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that whole piece. Go ahead, Lupe.
I'm not sure of the timing, as you said. That's quite interesting. It might be that. So if we're very sure that it was cut out before BVS, then it could be that Zack Snyder was concerned about how it was going to fit into the larger 5 story arc. So that could actually be something that Zack Snyder was privy to. To be sincere, when I hear a lot of the story decisions that were being made, I'm not sure that David Ayer had a great story, a very cohesive story. It does sound a little bit all over the place. Even the person who raised the concern about, like, this is many balls you're juggling and these sort of characters, it is quite valid. I don't think that the story sounds more streamlined or more apt for these characters, because one of the things I felt was an issue for the Suicide Squad is that the Suicide Squad, I mean, they tend to have a mix of supernatural and just regular superheroes, but their enemies tend not to be huge supernatural foes because they just don't have that sort of firepower to deal with that sort of a creature. And I just felt like in this story there was a power imbalance that just didn't work. And I feel like that's where it started to go downhill. If they had dealt with a regular physical threat, I think it would have been a lot better. Or there was no problem with them dealing with minions, but if it was like an army of minions and just no big, supernatural threat, things could have gone better. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about a director's cut, we're talking about their vision, whether it's good or not. It doesn't matter whether the vision is good. If you're saying that you're all for creative freedom, and I would like David Ayer to be criticized on his vision, not the studio's vision. That's the crux of the matter. So personally, I support the desire for his cut on principle. However, let's not forget that this happens to a lot of directors. This happened to Josh Trank. This happened to, it happens so much. It happened to Rogue One, happened to Fincher, it happened to David Lynch. Like
Ridley
I
Scott.
can, yeah, Ridley Scott. It
It's like,
happens. It happens all. It happens so much. It's part of the job. So on principle, I don't like it. I would like studios to stop doing that. But now, am I going to turn my desire for them to stop doing that into activism? That's the question. Because activism takes your time, takes your resources, takes your passion. Okay? And I personally, I'm not willing to do that for the Ayer cut or for any other cuts. But I'm willing to do it for the Snyder cut because to me, the Snyder cut is a different case entirely. It's one of the most egregious cases of this kind of thing for several reasons. Number one, we know that there was a family tragedy that happened with the Snyder cut. That makes a lot of us who are fans of his work feel deeply passionate about how the studio then handled the tragic time, his forced departure, etc., etc. Let's not get too deep into it. Rest in peace, Arthur Snyder. Also, we had 2 films before that. And the third one makes a hard left. So it's a promise unfulfilled. Now you can say trailers and a resultant film is a promise unfulfilled, or the promise of what a franchise should be, as they told us, like the DC was going to be this sort of edgy, sort of a darker, more serious, high craft universe that would deal with these, serious themes, blah, blah, blah. Now they've made a hard left to more lighter, family friendly, hope and optimism stuff. You could make that claim for the Ayer cut, but I see the Ayer cut as being very different because David Ayer stayed on the film. These changes may not have been changes that he intended in the beginning, but they were changes that he agreed to. When this movie came out, David Ayer promoted the movie. He called the final cut his cut. In an interview, he was asked if this was his cut, and he said, yes, this is my cut. So while he is backtracked and said, oh, I wanted to do other things, but blah, 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 he negotiated with the studio. He bargained with them. Snyder is different because Snyder resisted the studio. There was a post on Vero, which is now deleted, in which it was around January. This was when Snyder was headbutting the studio and fighting them tooth and nail. And he posted a shot of Rorschach and says, never compromise. So when you're talking about artistic integrity, this is a guy who did not compromise his artistic integrity. And he paid dearly for it because he was kicked off his movie. When he was kicked off his movie, he took everything, every Justice League digital paraphernalia off his social media accounts. People didn't know this. I noticed, and I knew that something was fucking wrong because his banner was no longer Justice League. He didn't go to Comic-Con. When the movie came out, he did not promote it even one bit. When the movie came out, he didn't see it and he still hasn't seen the movie. So miss me with equating the Snyder cut to the Ayer cut. And I can't tell anyone what to do with their lives. Like, if you want to campaign for the Ayer cut, go ahead and do it. But I'm a trained economist. And one thing that one thing economics deals with is quite simply, in a world of finite resources, how do you allocate those resources? In the world of finite wants. So you want to do an infinite amount of things, but the resources to do them are not infinite. So what sort of equations do you use to, make those two paradoxes come to a consensus? I do not have infinite energy. I do not have infinite time. I do not have infinite passion. I'm not going to spend all my time trying to campaign for every single artistic, crime that has been committed. On principle, I can say I don't like it and I wish it's not done, but I'm not donating money to every single cause. I'm not uh, joining every single Twitter event. I'm not, drumming up attention, telling my family about this, buying T-shirts, buying like you only have so much energy and so much time to do things, you know, in the world, period. Forget just social media. So right now I'm focused on the Snyder Cut, and I'm going to pursue that to its final conclusion. After that, then and only then can I turn my attention to anything else. Because in my mind, if I am, splitting myself between different ends, I am not putting 100% of myself into one particular thing that we have not even yet been successful at. Until there's success in that, I'm going to focus 100% of my intention, 100% of my energy. Also, here's a more controversial opinion, which can get me exiled. I might ruffle some feathers. I think that fighting for the Ayer Cut makes the fandom look entitled.
See, I was going to say that. I'm glad you said it because you're in the movement.
Yeah, because people hate to say it because people have claimed that it's just fans who like they just want something, just they don't like the way something went, so they look for a gripe and they just hammer it and they feel that and I feel like hammering on about, so what are you gonna do? So it's a Snyder cut this time, is this cut the next time, is that cut the next time, is that, in my opinion, if you want the studio to take you seriously, you have to let them know that the Snyder Cut in particular is a unique situation. They've done something really out of hand, and also have them have the feeling that if they acquiesce on the Snyder Cut, it's not going to become a trend where the wagon is leading the horse. Because any business in this world doesn't want a situation where they can't make decisions on their own, where they're held captive by fans and by an audience. Obviously,
aren't they already there, Lupe?
I mean, obviously they want. I mean, that's the irony of it. The irony of it is that they are, and but they want to feel like they're not. They don't want to be held by ransom, because that's what basically we're doing with the Snyder Cuts. We are holding their feet to the fire.
But they were held at ransom, which is why we got Justice League. They felt they were.
No, they weren't held at random. Complaints are different. People complain.
Well, they were responding to narrative and felt they had no choice but to.
Yeah, people complained about the movies. They will feel that that was them responding to what fans want. But this is people actually like saying this is what we want, and it's an organized campaign to do that. It's different from like customers' response or customer demands. Like this is like an organized one. So
I disagree a little bit with that, not entirely, but I'll go ahead and finish.
If you disagree, it's fine. It's fine. It's just my opinion.
Yeah, no, go ahead and finish. Cause I mean, I've got a
I'm done.
Okay.
I'm done. I know that's going to ruffle feathers. I know people are not going to like that, but that's my truth. And I'm not saying that I will never fight for that. As I said, on principle, I agree with it. And as a matter of fact, if I see somebody campaigning for the Ayer Cut, I'm not going to like go in their mentions and be like, "Oh, what are you doing? Stop doing that."
Yeah, don't do that.
You're free to do whatever you want to do. It's your world, and I support your freedom to do that. And as I've said, on principle, I do want his cut. But as I've said, until I get the Snyder Cut, 100% of my energy that's going to go towards activism for art goes to the Snyder Cut. Once that's over, then let's talk about the Ayer Cut. That's where I stand.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I mean, I'm like 95% Snyder Cut, 5% Ayer Cut in terms of right. I don't want to lose sight of the Ayer Cut, and I do think it has its merits. But I look at to me as more, despite being organized, these things are still about consumer demand. It's about proving consumer demand in a organized fashion. Now, yeah, Snyder was wronged. It's a more egregious situation. It's made worse by the family tragedy, how the studio responded. I mean, my personal feeling, and obviously I don't know all the details, but you try and put yourself in his shoes, and as a parent, I would think to myself, I've got this enormous commitment that I've made to see this movie through, despite my personal tragedy. I'm going to try and go back, finish this as best I can. I remember him making the comment that he thought it would be cathartic, and then realized that his family needed him. And I'm sure, I'm sure he realized to some extent that, that he was making a sacrifice to see this movie through. But then when you come back and are to find out you've been usurped, they're not working with you.
I'm telling you, like getting into it, getting deeper into it, it's almost unspeakable.
It's horrific. Like he's making that sacrifice to come back and see this through, and not only are they not working with him, they've effectively usurped him and continue to force him out until he finally reaches his breaking point. In May, if that is in fact when he reached his breaking point, but that was when he sent out the tweet with Rorschach. So you feel for the guy, right? There's an emotional, a human level of outrage over what happened. And as you pointed out, and this is a very valid point, this was the third movie in the series. Like, if Peter Jackson had finished the first two Lord of the Rings movies and then filmed a 3.5-hour conclusion to the Lord of the Rings trilogy, had a personal tragedy, came back to find out that they wanted him to turn it into a 2-hour action comedy, and then brought in someone to help out, like it's unfathomable, right? And on top of that,
what happened.
It's what happened. Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And to say it's incredible on top of the outrage of the human element. Now, that being said, we still have to make a case to Warner Brothers that there is a viable financial case to be made for releasing this cut, and I think we've done that. I think it's part of the zeitgeist. It's a pop culture. It's a piece of pop culture right now, and the comic book movie fandom industry, it's not small. Right, there's
it's a pop culture staple. It's incredible.
Yeah, and even when people are slamming the DC films, like going back to Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad, they were making big money. Like you can say it didn't make $1 billion all you want, but I mean 872 million ain't bad. And Suicide Squad made what, 750-ish million? Mm-hmm. I mean, these are not small movies, and there was a lot of disappointment that these movies were meddled with. And there's a lot of fans that miss that tone, that don't like that Warner Brothers threw away the universe that was being built to give them something fun and lighthearted, because a loud segment of the broader fandom complained that was the problem. It needed to be lighthearted. It needed to be more fun. It needed to be more colorful. It needed to have more jokes. And Warner Brothers said, well, geez, it's not hitting $1 billion. They must be right. So let's blow the whole thing up. Well, in the process, they threw away their original fan base, the fan base that formed a large part of that income. Now, I understand that not everyone that paid to see BVS or Suicide Squad enjoyed those movies, but a decent percentage of the audience did. And that audience was basically thrown away to try and grab the larger audience. And it was a massive failure. So I look at this more in the sense of the Ayer Cut. I look at it more from a strictly consumer perspective. I would pay to see this movie. I don't think I'm part of a small group that would be interested in seeing this movie. I think even the haters would want to see what Ayer had. And I think on its own, if this was just the Ayer Cut, it would never have gotten any traction, and it would die off, and you'd never have heard anything about it. But because the Snyder Cut has become so big, because there's such a visibility and a demand for the Snyder Cut and a demand for what we lost in that universe, if the Ayer Cut really is near enough finished that it could be polished up and released at a reasonable cost, and by all accounts, it seems like it is, right? I mean, it's been screened to test audiences. It seems like there was competing versions being screened right up until the end. And even if the VFX aren't completely finished, we talked about this with regards to the Snyder Cut. I mean, when you look at what they're spending on lesser-known IPs to create content for their streaming services, I think the demand for the Ayer Cut of Suicide Squad with a tiny little bit of marketing pushed to people through economical means, pushed to subscribers, right, through low-cost methods, you're going to get a lot of demand for this. I think there's a viable business case to be made, and I think there's a large demand. It's a huge IP. I mean, why wouldn't you? If you're a fan of DC Comics, a fan of DC films, why wouldn't you want to see the Ayer Cut? I would pay for it. So as a consumer, Snyder Cut is, as a fan, and as sort of an activist, for lack of better words, Snyder Cut's going to take priority. But as a consumer, I'd pay for both. I mean, Snyder Cut, I've committed to buying multiple copies, and as I say, I will do that. I will go out and buy my 10 Blu-rays, and I'll pass them out to people I think would be interested in it. I will buy my 10 tickets to any theatrical release if we're lucky enough to get a theatrical run, and I will take people who are interested in going. I'm not necessarily making those promises for the Ayer Cut, but would I buy the Ayer Cut for myself? 100%.
Yeah.
So as a consumer, I'm willing to express demand, because really that's what this is. This is just an organized method of expressing consumer demand, and we've been ignored so long that you forget sometimes that we're just consumers trying to tell a studio what we want. And so for me, I think there's validity from a consumer standpoint, more so than a moral outrage standpoint when it comes to the Ayer Cut. Although there is, I mean, it's not entirely without merit from a moral outrage, in the sense that we were thrown away, right? We were tossed aside for the lure of a better, bigger audience, which they found out was the wrong approach. Pardon me?
I said which never came.
Yeah, which never came. I mean, it turns out that audience that was hating on those films didn't want a better version of those films. They just wanted to complain.
They still want your films.
They still want your films, yeah.
Wasn't I the other audience? Wasn't it me? And it didn't work.
Well, you weren't unhappy with what you had. I mean, you weren't out trolling.
But that's what I'm trying to say. Remember, the audience, and what I'm saying is, I was the other audience. You're right. I was not trolling, and I was not being a part of the blogosphere, and I was not. And I liked
the hate mob.
No, I was not part of the hate mob. I want to make goddamn sure that everybody knows I was not part of the hate mob. I had no problem with BVS, and I didn't start the hate train after that. We talked about Man of Steel just the other week, or last week on our last pod. But apparently, I'm the person they were trying to market for, and they still failed. So what does that tell you? Something's wrong. So, and we've said that before. I don't know if I'll shut up after this. I don't know if I agree 100% on how much a potential Ayer Cut would make. I do agree.
I'm with you there. I mean, carry on, but
go ahead.
The same thing. No, I'm not too sure about the commercial viability of it.
Compared to other streaming titles, like if it cost them 20 or 30 million to polish up the Ayer Cut and they put it on HBO Max and promoted it, do you think it's not going to bring in more traffic than some of the other crap they spend 20, 30 million, 40 million on?
Yeah, I agree with that. I do agree with that. I do.
Mm-hmm.
But they also have to look at the downside, though. If they release, the Snyder Cut has top billing. However you want to look at it, even if you're one of those people who says it's never going to be released. Well, the never is not as never as the Ayer Cut, okay? But if they release a Snyder Cut, then they release the Ayer Cut, the DC brand is just going to be dead, because
it's already gone.
Let's be objective to a degree. I mean, it's not as vibrant as it was, but it's not completely gone. But
I really don't think it is. I don't think it's gone.
Yes, no, it's not gone.
I don't.
But
it's gone for a section of the
do you think they've changed it for the better? Do you think it's in a healthier place now than it was after Batman v Superman?
I didn't say that.
I never
said
said
gone,
that.
Though.
But their movies are still making profit. People are looking forward to Wonder Woman. People are looking forward to the Batman movie.
Yeah, gone would be nobody gives a crap where this is going, and
tank everything.
Yeah, and
Birds of Prey did flop.
It flopped.
But yeah. But I'm saying the entire DC brand is not in the shitter.
It's not dead, but I don't see how this is going to hurt the brand. I mean, you release these films, and people say, you know what? Some people say, oh, it's awful. We were better getting the bright colors and comedy pop version of Suicide Squad, and other people say, wow, this is great. This is what they should have released.
This is why I say that it will, because The Snyder cut is one thing, but you release the Ayer cut, it means that you guys don't even like it's as it's gonna look like every single movie is just like a fucking mess. It's just like alternate cuts for you and alternate cuts for you and you get an alternate cut
Well,
and you get an alternate cut.
Participation trophy.
you know what though?
It's gonna
I
look,
disagree. These aren't
it's
the
gonna
first
look
movies to get alternate
so
cuts though.
bad. Like no,
Yeah, but
the
that's the
Snyder
point.
cut.
But they all don't
No,
get an alternate cut, though.
yeah,
No, but some movies do. Some movies that
Yes,
have been a lot
some
less
do.
profitable get
no,
alternate cuts. Like
Sometimes they
look
do.
how many alternate cuts Blade Runner got. I mean, it was, you know,
but that's
look like
different. That's
Kingdom of
different
Heaven. You
from
know, you've got
Ayer
other
cut.
every
Yes,
movie
but
Snyder's ever made gets a director's cut.
no,
Like,
but
I mean, these
that's
are
different
different.
from
These are
this.
different.
The tone of those ones aren't particularly changed. It's just some of those ones have to do with you look at it and be like, maybe it's cutting out fat. That's what we look at with a lot of director's cuts, right? It's about the length. You're getting more, you're getting a deeper dive into it. That's usually the way people feel.
That's a good point.
If you're a cinephile, you might, look deeper into it. But in general, people just feel like a director's cut and a regular cut has to do with fat. Like these scenes were needed, you didn't add more to it, blah blah blah, whatever. But these cuts are basically supposed to be like a completely different movie. That's why we're fighting for them, right? It's
Well,
not just
what's
that longer. It's that we're getting a completely different movie. So comparing it to a director's cut, regular director's cut, is not the same thing. And I already the Snyder cut is gonna make them look bad. We know that. But we're trying to tell them that as bad as it's gonna make you look, there's gonna be a lot more benefit. And you just have to
well,
swallow the hard pill.
I
But
think it's a false
at the
narrative
Ayer
that the
cut,
Snyder cut makes them look bad. I think the damage is already done. I think now releasing it makes them look good and builds back goodwill. We're past the point of making them look bad. They look bad. Everyone knows. Everyone that
yeah, but
cares
yeah,
knows. You
yeah,
know,
I agree, but that's the point of the campaign. The point of the campaign is that we're making them look bad. But I'm saying like with the Ayer cut, I don't the Ayer cut, for example, like the Ayer cut just doesn't really have there's not a lot of support or passion behind it for a lot of reasons. One, Ayer is not as popular as Snyder, his material is not as popular
he's not. No.
as Snyder. So it's a different I don't see the benefits for the studio being as much as like with the Snyder cut
No,
because
it's not the same. No, I'm
with
not saying it's the
Snyder
same.
cut,
I'm just saying I think they're still viable if you're looking for content for a streaming service and you want an IP with a huge built-in fan base and you can produce a theatrical quality film for 20, 30 million, let's say
20, 30
20, 30
bucks.
bucks, no,
Yeah.
20, 30 million. And you've got, and the thing with these streaming services too is like, you know, okay, if there's no streaming service, are you going to polish up the Ayer cut and re-release Suicide Squad in theaters? No, not a chance. But if you look at me as a subscriber, potential subscriber to HBO Max, you know, they put out some IP I've never heard of. They spend 30, 35, 40 million on some series or that, you know, I've never heard of, don't care about. Or they spend 20, 30 million on the Ayer cut and push trailers to me, to my email address where I'm signed up, or I put it on YouTube, um, saying a completely different version, or maybe not, that's not exactly how you market it, but you market it in a way that highlights the differences, the unseen footage, the different spin on the story. There's going to be more people, I would think, interested in that than some random series they're trying to kick off the ground that's probably going to die after one season. You know, I just think that the model changes with streaming. The little bit of cost it would take to polish this up, the huge built-in audience, and the fact that the damage is already done. I mean, these universes, like these branches of the universe, are dead. Like there's not a Justice League 2. I mean, the Snyder Cut isn't going to, without the Snyder Cut. I mean, the only hope there'd be for a Justice League 2 is the Snyder Cut, and I think that's, I mean, still a long shot even with the Snyder Cut. But they're not going to move forward with the Justice League off the theatrical cut. This Suicide Squad, they've already distanced themselves from it, so it's essentially dead. I mean, even though James Gunn's keeping a few of the characters, I mean, they've been very, very hesitant and to call it a sequel. I don't.
I think you're being overly optimistic and sort of like you're looking at this from your fan perspective and let me put this into some perspective. We don't know exactly the decisions that are going on at the meetings in the studio or the politics behind the scenes. But I do know this. I was having a conversation with Larry Fong about Batman v Superman, and I said, why don't just, release the IMAX version? I would buy that in a heartbeat.
Mhm.
He said they are never going to invest in that. I'm like,
I,
what? You
yeah, I
already
saw that.
have
I
it.
saw
So
that,
think
and I don't
about it.
know.
Yeah, think about it. That's even easier and will make you money to do than the Ayer Cut.
Well, that
Yes,
requires physical
and
printing, though. Physical
he
printing of
said,
Blu-rays and marketing of Blu-rays, and
I
Blu-rays
said
are dying
just
media.
just digital, just digital. I said just he said they will never do it. It's the same reason why Zack Snyder had to make a bootleg commentary of Batman v Superman, and the studio wouldn't just put a little bit of money into making a commentary.
And,
So
and,
I
and
think
why do
that
you think there's such resistance, though?
as optimistic as you are, the reality is just completely different. For
Well,
us to get the Snyder cut is going to be a monumental task. Let's not make two bones about this. Like, I think maybe people are looking at sort of the success of the movement itself and forgetting that getting the Snyder cut is going to be unprecedented. It's really going to be. Now, people will say, oh, no, but, there have been cuts, for example, the Donner cut. The Superman movie is a beloved movie. Like, they were itching to release stuff like that. Blade Runner became a cult classic. Batman v Superman is still a divisive movie. It's still a movie that a lot of people hate. It's a movie that a lot of people in that studio, I'm telling you, hate. If you see the trajectory that they're still going on, you can tell that they absolutely hate it. So when we get the Snyder cut, people shouldn't look at it like, oh yeah, we did it. That's cool. It's impossible to get the Snyder cut. We're gonna do it, but I'm telling you, we're making the impossible happen. So even thinking about the Ayer cut is almost is like is being so optimistic. Is actually even thinking that you already got the Snyder cut. Meanwhile, we've not been successful at all with the Snyder cut, to be sincere, until it's released. We can't say we've been. So jumping from that to a conclusion of, oh yeah, so we got that one going. Oh, let's go for the Ayer cut. That's really optimistic.
yeah, I don't totally disagree with you, but what I do think has changed is that they have a means to release these things now, and that they have a huge built-in audience for that IP. I think that's kind of we're at a unique point where, I
You
mean,
know,
yeah, there's egos, but I don't know. And you know what? To be quite honest, I'd be happy just watching it in whatever version it is, the same way I was, with the Snyder Cut when we first started campaigning for it. Now, can we, if we can, if by some miracle we get the Snyder Cut in its finished, polished version with any additional footage that they want to film, yeah, I recognize that's a unique situation. But if the Ayer Cut was at a point where it was being test screened, I just believe that there'd be an audience for it, and I don't believe it would cause any harm at this point releasing it. I just don't. I mean, I get what you're saying about an IMAX version of BVS, and they'll never release it. I remember seeing that comment. I also think there's more demand for a totally different version of Snyder of Suicide Squad that features Jared Leto's Joker in all the footage that was supposedly left on the cutting room floor. I mean, there was a lot of talk about that at the time, and there still is, about how much of Leto's Joker we never got to see. I think despite the bad rap he gets, I think there's curiosity for that. I'm certainly curious for it. I actually liked his take on the Joker, and would have liked to have seen more of his interaction with Harley Quinn, because I think that's some of what worked in that film. So yeah, I get that we're not the entire, like, we're not representative of the broader audience, but I think that the comic book market, the CBM market, is a pretty substantial market, and I think there's a decent enough share of that market that would be interested in watching something like that if it was as available simply by clicking on a service that you're subscribing to. Is it
Let's
enough?
let,
Go ahead.
let's see what Christian has to say. You were about
Yeah.
to chime in, Christian.
I don't have anything big to add. I think the only thing is, as we think about these digital services, and Paul does raise a good point. This is a brand new market that we can utilize to get some of this stuff out there. The three of us have talked about Netflix and how that could be potentially the future of some of this stuff moving forward. Not just Netflix, of course, but streaming services in general. But when you're building a streaming service like HBO Max, I think what you said before Paul, I think is, I was thinking about it and I was going over it in my head and I was like, do they really want to go backwards though? Like putting the Ayer Cut on there is in a sense almost going backwards. What does that do for them? If I'm a business person, I'm opening up HBO Max and I'm moving forward with this. I get a one shot out of the Ayer Cut and I spend $30 million and release it onto my streaming service. How many subscribers am I going to get based on that? I'm telling you, probably not many. It's probably not going to happen. So
Not many at all.
Not many. Even with
based on that
DC,
alone, not many. But
no, it's not going to happen.
I don't think so at all.
And we may all, and we're going to talk about this in a second, I think, we may all disagree with where they're going with some of their stuff moving forward with HBO Max. That's true. But that's what they're going to need to do if they want to try to get a diversified subscriber base. They have to do whatever to carve themselves out. I don't think the Ayer Cut does that for them. I know there is a group of folks that will sign up because of the Snyder Cut. I get that, but I don't know even what those numbers are, if that's as large as some of us think it is. I'm thinking right now, I know what you're saying. I agree with you, by the way. I thought there were a couple different cuts of Blade Runner, and when Ridley Scott did what he had to do, it was freaking great. We got Kingdom of Heaven. I'm using Ridley Scott a lot here. The director's cut of Alien. I mean, come on. So, and I don't know if either of you guys have ever seen the director's cut of James Cameron's Aliens. It's fucking great. But you can see why that movie was not the one that was in theaters. There is a difference here than what happened with Snyder. Snyder got fucked. But Ayer was just part of we just talked about it before with Trank. He was just part of the studio bullshit that happens. And he went on record saying, like, yeah, I'm okay with this movie. I'm cool. It was all part of the process, as opposed to a poor guy that lost his daughter and they got fucked by the studio. That to me is completely different. I see where you're coming from, Paul. I hope you don't think I'm poo-pooing.
No.
I think there's interest there, definitely.
I'll shut up.
We
need to move on, guys. We do need to move on.
I understand, Lupe. But one last point I would say is, I don't disagree with what you guys are saying. I'm not some nut that thinks that everyone in the free world is going to want to sign up for the Ayer Cut. But if you look at what Netflix produces. Look at their original movies. Are you telling me people are signing up for any of those? I mean, 80% of those no one's ever heard of unless they already subscribe to Netflix. They're just putting up more content to try and keep the subscribers they've got, keep giving you something new to watch, right? But you're not signing up for 80% of these films that no one's ever heard of. Even if you subscribe to Netflix, you haven't heard of half of these things, right? So, to me, if they make a big premiere, like this week's big feature on HBO Max is we're releasing the Ayer Cut of Suicide Squad, never before seen. That's going to hold more interest than a lot of the potential stuff they put out there, and at probably a lower cost. That's the perspective I'm coming from on this.
It's not a bad idea. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, no, it's not a bad idea, and we have different opinions on it, and in the coming months and years or whatever, we'll see how this story plays out. Time will tell. And let's move on to our next topic. This is we don't really have to do a deep dive on this, but let's start with the fact that the theatrical Broadway sensation Hamilton was greenlit for a movie version, and it was scheduled to come to theaters in 2021. And because of quarantine and a lot of stuff going on, stuff being dropped way early on streaming services, in all the pandemonium and chaos, Hamilton is coming to streaming a lot sooner than that. It was quite a shock to people. I haven't seen Hamilton on Broadway. I don't really like musicals, to be sincere. But this is make no mistake about it, it's a massive pop culture sensation, and it's a big, big, big deal. So what do you guys think of Hamilton coming to streaming this year instead of next year? And we can roll this into whatever you want to say about the state of streaming services versus the theatrical. experience during this difficult time that we're all dealing with.
Well, let me take this one because Hamilton's an example of something where I'm already subscribed to Disney Plus. It would in no way incentivize me to sign up for Disney Plus, but I'm a subscriber, and when it comes out, hey, you know what? I might check it out. I never saw this musical. It never particularly interested me. I'm not going to pay for tickets to go see it, in theater or on stage. And as I say, it's not going to incentivize my subscription, but I have Disney Plus. I like Disney Plus. And if that's the big premiere one Friday, well, hey, maybe I'll check it out. At least give it 30 minutes, see if it grabs my attention. So for me, that's it's not something I would have gone to see in movie theaters either. So the only way I am going to watch it is if they put it on one of these streaming services. And so sure, I'll watch that.
And it's coming on the 3rd of July. Like, it's not like it's far off on the horizon. It's like it's right here. Christian, what do you think about Hamilton coming to streaming? And are you excited to see it?
It's interesting. Yeah. To be honest, I kind of am. I'm a huge, I love musicals. I love Broadway. It's killing me that I can't go to Broadway right now with this pandemic. And it looks like I probably won't be able to go till 2021 at this point. So there's nothing quite like seeing a live performance. There's nothing quite like seeing actors and actresses and the director and the orchestra underneath the stage, and everything that goes into a production I think it's beautiful. And there's something very pure about it too. I just love live theater. And it sucks that I'm not going to be able to see anything like that for another year. It's a first world problem, whatever. But so that's how it is. I did not see Hamilton. It was almost impossible to get tickets, and I wasn't paying $400 a pop. So I think that this probably says more about Disney's streaming strategy than it does about Disney's theatrical strategy, I think. This was not a potential blockbuster they're moving. This was probably something that would make them a decent amount of money, but they're pulling it back because they probably need something to put in the Disney Plus into their library. That's what I think. I think, they had a whole bunch of shit. Like WandaVision was supposed to come out this summer. They were going to have Winter Soldier, Falcon. There's all kinds of stuff that they were going to start releasing. They can't do it. They can't do it. The pandemic screwed everything up. And we said it a couple of pods ago. You do have to have new stuff come out if you're currently subscribed to one of these services. It will keep you in the service. I think they rocketed past 50 million subscribers recently. Good for them. But you got to keep those people, because in a time in an economic, where things are tough economically, people could turn around and be like, I'll choose Netflix over them, or I'll choose this one over them, and I could drop it. Maybe this incentivized them enough to stick with it. I don't know. It goes back to Paul's previous argument. Is this the kind of thing like an Ayer Cut? Is this going to make people be like, yeah, I'll stick with Disney? I don't know. I have no clue. But I'll tell you what scares me a little bit, and then I'll shut up. Is it, we're seeing a little bit more of this now, where they're experimenting, releasing some of these movies onto streaming. And I know I've talked about it before that maybe that's where the future is, but are we watching the beginnings of the cinematic experience starting to crumble away before our eyes? And
I think so.
And that's scary, Paul. I don't like that.
Well, you know what? I actually do kind of like it. And I know this is going to be an unpopular opinion.
No, it's
sorry,
okay.
I'm going to
It's
cut you
okay.
off, Christian, but I just want to talk to this one point. Like I said with Hamilton, it's the only way I'm going to watch it. You put this on a streaming service. I'm not going to subscribe to a streaming service for it.
Yeah, but you're not buying it.
And I'm not going to
money.
I'm not. Well,
I mean?
but I am going to give it a view, and maybe it incentivizes me to keep. It keeps me. If they keep giving me something to check out,
I hear you.
It keeps me subscribing. So, for example, the only way I'm going to watch this is if it's free on a streaming service I own, or I already pay for, and I'll give it 30 minutes of my time. And if it grabs me, I'll finish it. And if it doesn't, I won't. And there's a lot of movies that fall into that category for me. So I think for a segment of the market, that's going to be the future.
Yeah, but can't the argument be made that after the theatrical run, you'll still get that opportunity?
Yeah, you could. Although there is a little more, at least right now, there's a little more intrigue to it being a premiere on streaming service. Like, it might make me more inclined to even give it that 30 minutes, where if it's already come out to theaters and I've heard people's responses and I'm pretty sure it's something I'm not going to be interested in.
Yeah.
I think, Phil, the difference would be, and I, again, I'm not attacking anybody for this. It's just, you would not have actually gone to video on demand and either rented it or paid for that movie, no matter what. You're not going to the theater. You're not giving it your bucks if it's available on Amazon for rental. It's got to be on a streaming service that you subscribe to, and that's the only reason. It's not going to force you to get into Disney Plus. It's not going to entice you to get into Disney Plus. It might, for you, like you're saying, and I'm the same way. I'm like, oh, cool, it's new content. I have Disney Plus, so I'm happy that I'm getting more content. But I got to tell you, I know what you're saying, and there are times I totally feel the same way, that I'm like, I'd rather just sit in front of my 60-inch TV with my wife and have my nieces and nephews around us, and we sit together and we can pause it when we gotta go to the bathroom and all that kind of stuff. I'm with you, but I'm not comfortable with the cinematic experience crumbling away as we speak. I'm just not comfortable with that.
I don't want it to totally go away, but I think there's a large chunk of movies. I mean, large isn't the right word, but there's definitely a category of film that probably is going to go this way sooner rather than later.
Totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree.
And you know, going back to the idea of will something get me to subscribe? In the case of Disney Plus, they're doing this with Artemis Fowl as well. That's one that I probably wouldn't have gone to see in the theater. And again, I'm already a Disney Plus subscriber. But if all I had to pay was $7.99 for a month of Disney Plus, and they're releasing Artemis Fowl on Disney Plus, and I'm not currently a Disney subscriber, I'd pay $8 to be able to watch that with my daughter, on opening weekend. I mean, that's going to get 1 month out of me. And then once they've got you for that first month, as we all know, it's sometimes you just forget to cancel. And then you're like, it's only $8. I'll hang in there for another month. And then next thing you know, 6 months have passed, 7 months have passed. And you're like, whatever, I can afford this. It fits into my budget. That's how they catch people, right? You're too lazy to make the phone call to cancel, or you're too lazy to go in your app and click cancel. Or you know what, I want to cancel, but there's something I want to watch next week, so I'll wait until after next week and then cancel, and then you forget, right? So I don't know. I mean, I think it can work to incentivize it. It doesn't have to be the greatest thing ever. It just has to be moderately interesting. So anyway, go on, Christian.
So let me come at this from a few interesting angles. One, I think that them putting Hamilton on to Disney Plus is a good move for a lot of reasons. One, even if musicals are not for everybody, just the fact that something of such pop culture significance and magnitude is on there makes the package increase in value. So, for example, there are movies that I don't like, but they're prestige movies. So, for example, like Netflix has that Alfonso Cuarón movie, the one that's shot in black and white, and I've never seen it. I've never wanted to see it. I've never cared about seeing it, but it's an Oscar, it's an Oscar movie. Like it's it's highly heralded. So that just makes me feel that my entire Netflix package is better than it was. You understand what I'm saying? Like, even though I'm not using it, I feel like I'm paying for something that is, go ahead, Paul.
Well, I was going to say, like buying a Blu-ray makes your Blu-ray collection feel better, even if you never watch it, even if a year from now it's still the plastic.
It's pretty much that, but it's a lot better in this case because you don't have to pay extra for that extra movie. It's just on there, and you feel like, you're getting value for the money you're paying because there's good content on there. It's just not for you. So that I think they're going to reap the benefits of that. But there's also something that I thought of that is quite interesting. Maybe it's a tinfoil hat kind of thing, but I was thinking, now this is probably wrong, but is it possible that the movie's not as good as they thought it would be, so they're dumping it on streaming? I guess that's an old world way of thinking when they used to do that.
Better do that for New Mutants.
Mowgli would be an example. New Mutants, I don't know if you guys saw it, but they just gave it a new theatrical release date. I think August 28th.
Yeah.
That's one that should just go straight to streaming at this point. But
I think no idea what's going on with that movie.
Mowgli was an example where the studio got cold feet, right?
No, they're trolling us with New Mutants. I hope you guys.
I think so. Yeah. But you know what? Mowgli was one that got dumped on streaming, and I was excited about that one. And if I wasn't already a Netflix subscriber, that's one I would have considered paying to watch. Mm-hmm. That would have potentially got my subscription if I wasn't already there. Yeah. So, go on though. But yeah.
Yeah. But those are just the things I'm thinking about. But also one of the reasons why they're doing this is because their revenue streams in terms of any other thing are not fruitful. So, this is a way to try to attract more subscribers, put new stuff on there. And I think it's all in all, it's a good move, although it's not going to make me sign up for Disney Plus, even if I had Disney Plus, not something I'm going to watch. But I think it's a good move. And I think that this could be sort of a blueprint, not to bring it back to the Snyder Cut, which means that I'm bringing it back to the Snyder Cut. But this serves without going deep down the rabbit hole. But this kind of serves as a blueprint for the kind of stuff that HBO Max can look forward to with the Snyder Cut. And I think people really do need to sort of like watch like the cost benefit results of this, because basically Disney has reached a point where they don't have any new event content, and they're not going to have any for the foreseeable future because of the postponement of production on films. So they're having a dry spell, and so they have to put something on there. And I think that HBO Max is going to probably go through the same thing in terms of reach a point where they need content, and then they be able to look back on this time where people have taken things and put them on streaming, and there has been some benefit to it. So I'll be very curious to see how it performs, what the reception is like, what the statistics are like, if it brings them new subscribers, or if it increases the value of the streaming service. I think it's one to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I don't know if a musical like this will do that, but you guys brought it up at the beginning of the conversation. It kind of became a pop culture sensation, and it became a right versus left argument and all that other garbage because everything becomes political for some stupid reason. Yeah, so it will be interesting to see.
And we're not necessarily the demographic that is most targeted by that. And I think, when I think about water cooler talk at work, I'm sure there's just as many people that would talk about Hamilton as there would be about some of the films that might interest me, right? Sure. Probably more. Because Hamilton did get a lot of, living in Toronto, just like you're outside New York, Christian, it's, you see the signs. When it's there on stage, there's billboards up advertising it, so, so it's something that people do talk about. Now, would they be as interested in seeing a movie version of the stage production? Who knows? The people that are interested in the stage production probably saw the stage production for the most part. But then there's some people that, like you say, and myself included, don't want to spend the $200-$400 for tickets, right? Mm-hmm. So, and maybe this is the way you can afford to see it. So for me, this is the only way I would afford to see it, because it's just, I don't place that kind of value on. And I do like musicals. Not all musicals. There's certain ones that grab my interest, and others that I'm not willing to spend that kind of money. Not that I wouldn't necessarily watch or enjoy them. It's just I'm not going to spend that kind of money if it doesn't really grab me, right? So this is the one way that I would probably consume that story.
Yeah, interesting. Well, on July the 3rd, it's coming soon. And talking about coming soon, we have our coming soon section is back in full effect. Okay, it's not back in full effect. It's back kind of in effect, because we only have one trailer that we're reacting to, and it's not even a movie trailer. That's how barren this wasteland is. But it does relate to movies in a very big way, and we will tell you how. So it's a trailer for the Unreal Engine 5. And Unreal Engine, it's a platform that video game makers use to, build graphical CGI worlds. Basically, that's like the layman's, and it's like the most advanced one. And also it's quite easy to use for developers. It's the most heralded one. So they put out a trailer for the new engine, and it's running on the technology of the PlayStation 5, which is coming out later in this year. I believe that that hasn't been delayed or pushed forward or anything like that. And wow, the internet was ablaze. It trended on Twitter. People were talking about it. So, guys, I want to hear your opinion and what do you think this means for cinematic storytelling and for cinema? So let's start with Christian.
2 words. Holy shit.
Holy
holy shit. I mean, this was, we talked about it a little bit off the pod, the lighting, the effect of the horizon when the girl in the video was coming, I shouldn't say girl, young woman, in the video was coming out of the cave, and you could see the sun cresting and the horizon blending just like your eyes would if you were coming out of that cave.
Mm-hmm.
The detail of the rocks, the water, the lighting effects, the scattering of the rats and the bugs, and even when it got more magical with the portal towards the end, the look, the feel, everything, the closest you feel to seeing something realistic in so far. I mean, the technology has come so far. It's truly incredible. We've talked so many times on this pod about how immersive these games have become and how this could be a whole new way to tell a story and almost like being inside a movie. That's why we love Last of Us so much. You're inside that movie. You feel the fear, you feel the pain, you feel the anguish, even the happiness of some of that. If they can get that with PS5 and the next generation Xbox, and now I know VRware is going to be a huge part of that too. People are talking a lot about virtual reality. You know, with studio interference and the whole conversation that we just had for the last almost 2 hours about studio interference and movies fucking the directors left and right. Maybe we'll get to that point one day with, you know, I know there's all these arguments with game developers and stuff, but there's a chance here to tell some truly unique stories for us to really feel like we're a part of it. It's almost like being in a movie that you can control.
Yeah.
You can control the protagonist. Yeah. It's just,
yeah.
I don't know. I love video games. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I don't want to sit here and, you know, wet my pants over this too hard. But
you already did. Too late.
Too late. Too late. I'm sorry. I'll shut up and give you guys a chance. But oh my God, what this represents for incorporating your senses and everything, in addition to having just a whole new experience and hoping that, like, maybe, you know, you see some of the names that are attached to these video games now and it's, oh my God. And now you're going to get this graphical power on top of it. We're entering into a really interesting world when it comes to these games, man. We really are.
Yeah. Paul, what's your reaction to the Unreal Engine 5 trailer?
Yeah, and as you guys know, I'm not a huge gamer, but wow, you know, that is impressive. You know, like you guys said, it's like immersing yourself in a live action movie, and my immediate reaction to seeing that was that it reminded me of being on Flight of Passage at Disney's Animal Kingdom. It's the Avatar. And have either of you guys been on it or seen it? Are you familiar with it at all?
Seen it, haven't been on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, you basically sit on a motorbike like a Tron light cycle, which is actually meant to represent one of the what are those things called? Ikrons, the dragons, and it's like a motorbike with lungs that breathe between your legs, right? Mm-hmm. And you're in front of this huge, I don't know what is 8K, 10K screen. It's some ridiculous resolution screen, and the entire platform moves, right? It tilts forward, backward, right to left, and you can feel the mist and the smells coming at you, and it's that kind of like immersive realism. And that's the first thing I thought when I saw this was like, this is going to be like being on that ride in my basement in front of my projector and screen, you know, and it's like, I thought, my God, you know, pretty soon you're not going to want to leave the house. You're just going to want to plug into your virtual fantasy world and not leave. It's incredible.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh my God. Can you imagine? I mean, people would go down, you know, go into those worlds and never come out right now. You know? It's like, what movie is it where there's like just that morbidly obese guy in his chair? Oh God. Playing like with a VR headset on, and that's kind of what I picture us all becoming when you see this, you know, like just covered in Cheetos and the same underwear we've been wearing for 2 weeks, you know.
Terrible. There's a vision. Thank you very much. Continue.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I had, you know, the same reaction to it in terms of just being mind blown. Like, graphics are getting to the level in which it's going to look like a movie. Period.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
only thing that didn't look quite human was the character. I
Yeah.
could still tell that she was a CGI,
Yeah.
construct.
Yeah.
But the environment looked 100% real. The physics, the light, diffusion, and bouncing, and everything looked real, and it was both breathtaking and terrifying. And it reminded
Yeah.
me immediately of this scene, and I'm going to do a read-in for you guys from The Matrix when Morpheus is explaining what the Matrix is to Neo. So Morpheus says, "You have been living in a dream world, Neo. This is the world as it exists today." Morpheus changes the channel on the television. The sky is an endless sea of black and green bile. The earth, scorched and split like burnt flesh, spreads out beneath us as we enter the television. Morpheus says, "Welcome to the deserts of the real. We have only bits and pieces of information, but what we know for certain is that at some point in the early 21st century, all of mankind was united in celebration. We marveled at our own magnificence." And end scene.
Yep.
And
Yep.
basically, it just reminds me that as Paul alluded to, we're going to be able to get into virtual worlds in which we're not going to be able to tell the difference between the real world and the dream world.
Exactly.
And
the line is
going to be close enough that you don't want to leave.
It's really like, and that's one of the beautiful things of sci-fi movies, is that, a lot of times they're Promethean, and that they serve as cautionary tales.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling you, like, we are going to, if you ever thought that was not a reality, we are going to get at that point, and we're getting there very quickly. Yeah. Before the end of our lifetimes, it's going to be a reality. Like, that's not even up for debate. If this is what they're doing at this point, it's up and away from here, and it's both awe-inspiring, but at the same time, it's terrifying because of what it's going to mean for the way we tell stories, for the way we live, the way we relate culturally, socially. There's just a lot going on. But in terms of film, I'm also excited for when we're going to be able to tell VR films. Like, that's going to be freaking incredible to be able to tell films in an environment where you can have a 360 and three-dimensional view of the environment and what's going on. That's going to be, I really think that in the future, that's going to be where cinema and storytelling is going to go to. We're not going to be looking at two-dimensional screens. We're going to be immersed in three-dimensional worlds where storytellers, give us their artistic visions.
Yeah, and I mean, you could see also, I've heard some of the conversations about them using, like, 4D crap where, if it's cold, you'll feel cold. If it's hot, you'll feel hot. If it's, you want to go to a theater, you want to be part of the experience. That's what it's going to be, because, Paul was talking about it before. It's
bringing
easier
the theme park home.
Yeah, because I can sit in front of my TV with my family and I can watch the movie there and we'll be very comfortable. But now what's going to make me get out of my house and spend the money? Maybe that's what it is. But
so
these video games are woo.
Yeah. So basically, we've brought the cinema home. We've brought work home. We're going to bring the theme park home. Amazon is going to make sure that you don't have to go out to buy your groceries. Yeah, I'm telling you, like, walking out of your house is going to be a revolutionary act. People are going to salute you.
For what it's worth, I haven't bought we're already getting the taste. I mean, I haven't bought a coffee. I haven't bought so much as a coffee from a restaurant since March 18th.
Oh, gosh.
I'm still on the same tank of gas from March 18th.
Yeah, I've filled up my gas tank in a month, that's for sure.
No,
like we're not far off.
Yeah, like we really are far. Like, these days, if you don't have one of the popular social media apps, people ask you what's wrong with you or why you don't. It's seen as an act of defiance. You know, like I try not to have all the social media apps. I have a couple. I try to compartmentalize, protect my privacy as much as I can in this world. And if somebody asks, yo, what's your WhatsApp? I'm like, I don't have WhatsApp. And they're like, why not? And it's like,
Hmm.
I don't want to have WhatsApp.
Yeah, don't want it.
Is
Yeah.
that okay? And for them, it's not enough. Like, why don't you have WhatsApp? And so we like it's the future is going to be a very interesting place because we're going to tell our kids the way our kids tell us, like when we were, your age, we used to like play outside. And I mean, I played outside when I was a kid, to be sincere. But it's the future is going to be really, really interesting. It
Yeah.
just is.
Yep.
It is. Well, that's our show for the day. ENN 29 is in the books. That was a really spirited discussion and an exciting one. What do you guys think? Did you guys enjoy the conversation?
It was a good conversation, man. It's always good when we talk about stuff that we can get a little fired up about and inject a little
Absolutely.
passion into it. So yeah, whether our opinions piss people off or not doesn't matter. It's all about the passion, you know.
We're exiles, baby. Exiles for a reason.
That's funny.
All right. So that's wrapping things up. It's a wrap. Guys, would you like to, say a little bit of a goodbye and an outro to our audience? Let's start with Paul.
Yep. Well, thanks again for listening, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If there's anything you want to reach out to us about, we're more than happy to engage in conversation.
You're gonna hear a lot.
Let us know where you weigh in on a couple of these topics, because we actually had some, I think, more disagreement amongst ourselves tonight than we usually do. So let us know where you weigh in on some of these topics. You can leave comments on YouTube, or reach out to us on Twitter at The Film Exiles, or me personally at _Paul_P.
Yeah. And Christian?
Same here. I had a good time. Like I said, I prefer the discussions where we're passionate about things. And hey, with everything that's going on out there, if we give everybody an opportunity to be distracted with something like this instead of concentrating on the bad news that's all over the place, then I'm glad, I'm happy, we've served our purpose, and that's wonderful. You want to talk with me as well about movie opinions, you can hit me up on Twitter and also on Instagram at the same place. I'm at chart6363.
Yeah. And I have been yours truly, Lupe. You can find me on Twitter at LiveLoveLupe. Feel free to send me all your hate mail or comments if you just want to have a nice lively discussion. I unapologetically apologize if I pissed you off this episode. I'm an exile, and so it's par for the course. We do hope to see you on the next episode of ENN. We really appreciate you for listening to this podcast. If there are any topics that you want us to discuss, if you have any, questions, anything you'd like us to talk about, shoot us a message on the Film Exiles. Tell us what you'd like us to talk about, and we'd be very happy to accommodate you and give you a little bit of a shout out. That's it for us. We are done for the day. It's a wrap, and until next time, stay exiled.